Come game hunting with me on this snowy day at an indoor swap meet. There was a ton of different booths, but we've got to wander our way through here and find some stuff. First off, I found some PS4 games that were still sealed for $5, but weren't really worth it. I also saw this arcade one-up tabletop Pac-Man machine, but they wanted too much for it. I continued on where I ended up finding this Nintendo DS bag with Mario on the front. But when I went up and asked them how much they wanted $10 for this thing, and it was pretty beat up, so I couldn't pay that much. So I left it behind. If it was cleaner, I would have picked it up. Then I made my way to this booth where they had a bunch of games here, and I kind of wandered through and looked around. They had some other games here for the PlayStation, but honestly, nothing too crazy. I did end up finding one game here that was kind of interesting, and that ended up being this Blur game for the Xbox 360, but they had it marked for $45, so that's a little too much. I saw this game, but I didn't end up picking it up. Then he said, hey, I like your backpack. Check out this bin. There's a bunch of more games. And so I kind of dug through this bin a little bit. And then I noticed they had a Guitar Hero Metallica here for the PS3. This was in pretty rough shape on the inside, but that's all I ended up finding here. And then I walked back over to where Blur was, and he had already taken the sticker off. So I went ahead and said, okay, cool. How much would you do for both of these games? And we'll talk about that in a bit. But I continued on where I ended up finding a few Xbox 360 games here, but nothing that was worth picking up. So I continued on to this booth that ended up having a Pac-Man lunchbox, but $85 for this thing is absolutely insane. So I continued on here, wandering through this swap meet, and I ended up making my way to my buddy Nick's booth, who runs the Tulsa Nostalgia Con. And I've been to his comic convention once before. Definitely awesome place. You gotta check it out. But he's got a ton of stuff here, literally just piles and mountains. NES games here, both loose and complete in the box. And there was some sealed ones as well as a bunch of Tiger Electronic handhelds down below, which were pretty cool. There's a Sega Genesis. And literally, I spent a lot of time just looking through this booth. There was just so much. PlayStation 2 games here. Nothing here that I had to have. I've got everything. So I kind of continued on here. And I made my way to the other side where they had a bunch of other games, like NES games and stuff like that. Then I continued on digging through this same booth. More NES games. Some awesome PlayStation 2 games here and there. Some interesting titles. Nothing that I don't already have, though. So I kind of kept looking to this Wii section. I ended up finding Mario Kart, but I opened it up and I checked it out, and the disc was missing, which is fine. Not a big deal. Then I ended up finding Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock, which was complete, and I ended up grabbing that. Then next to it was this ridiculously cool Mario disc case. I'm probably going to buy these the next time I see Nick. If he has these still, I'll definitely buy those from him. Then this little area in this tub had a few GameCube games. So I pulled those out, and I ended up finding Star Wars Bounty Hunter, which I don't think I have, which is why I picked it up. It was missing the manual, but that's perfectly fine. I ended up grabbing that as well. Then I made my way around the booth, and there was a bunch of Keith Courage in Alpha Zones. I'm pretty sure I have this, but I don't have it complete like this, so I ended up grabbing one of those. And then I just kind of wandered around here where some of the NES games were. Again, I was already here, but I kind of walked a few laps around this booth. Then I ended up finding a few Wii things here and there. Nothing too crazy. I don't really need any of that. Some PSP games, some games that I just don't need. Then I ended up seeing stacks of Xboxes and NESs, and even this Wii box, which we will talk about in a bit. Some Game Gear games here, both loose and CIB, which is pretty cool to see. And these are the 3 games that I ended up getting from my buddy Nick's booth. Then I continued on to this booth that had $2 video games. And anytime I go anywhere and they say $2 games, of course I'm going to look through them. Maybe I can find one or two here that are worth it. Kind of wandered through, nothing too crazy here. I did end up finding this NFL Fever game for the Xbox. I already have it though, so I left it behind. Then I ended up finding Grand Theft Auto 5 here, which I was gonna grab for $2, but then when I opened it up, I realized it only had the install disc and not the play disc, so I left that booth behind without picking any games up, unfortunately. But I ended up finding this booth that had a ton of plushies. There was a bunch of Mario stuff, even some Pikachu stuff, and a Donkey Kong, some pretty cool stuff. But then I ended up finding this Iggy plush, which I definitely had to grab. A few more here and there, some Guitar Hero guitars, but all I ended up getting was this Iggy plush for $7. Probably a little too expensive, but don't see these very often, so I ended up grabbing it. At the same booth, they ended up having a bunch of games here, some GameCube games, but all of these I have in my collection already, so I didn't even bother trying to grab these. They were a little pricey, honestly, so I figured it wasn't even worth it. I continued on where I ended up finding this PlayStation 4 for $100 down below, just the system, and then they had a ton of games here, some marked for 10, some marked for 5, and I kind of looked through it hoping I could find something that maybe I'm interested in or something I don't already have. But again, all of these are games I either have in my collection or I'm just not really interested in, so I left those behind. While I was walking around, I ended up seeing this Pikachu plush from far away, and then I got closer into the booth and realized I think I've bought from this vendor before. He had a bunch of NES and Super Nintendo games here in the back, and so I was kind of checking those out and trying to see if there was anything I had to have here, but these were all pretty much what they were worth. This guy's a reseller and he knows the prices, so there wasn't anything that was here that was kind of worth picking up. And if they were worth picking up, it was a little too expensive for a swap meet in my opinion, but hey, that's just me. I did notice that he had a bunch of these NSYNC Game Boy Color games still sealed. I already bought one of these from him before for only $1, so I ended up leaving that behind. And then last but not least, I saw this booth right here that had a bunch of Japanese PSP and PS3 games. But sadly, while I was looking through there wasn't anything that just jumped out at me. A lot of JRPGs that I probably would never play. So honestly, I just left those behind and didn't end up picking up anything from them. But overall, I'm pretty happy with everything that I ended up picking up. First off, I ended up finding those 2 games. This was $36 for Guitar Hero Metallica. It was in some rough shape, especially the disc. There was like some water damage there, but I think the disc will still play. And then Blur for the Xbox 360. This game's worth about $20 or so, maybe a little less in this condition, but I'll clean it up. And then this game is worth about $35, so paying $36 for this, I feel like was a no-brainer, and I'm glad to add this to my collection. I'll probably try to clean this up and trade it off, but first stop, definitely well worth it. Then I made my way to my buddy Nick's booth where I bought a lot of stuff. Starting off with the games, you saw everything I ended up picking up. Keith Courage in Alpha Zones. I think I have this just with the Hue card, but this is a complete in-box one, so I'm definitely happy there. Then I ended up getting Star Wars Bounty Hunter. I know this was missing the manual, but I don't care too much. As long as the GameCube games have their artwork, that is good enough for me. Definitely well worth grabbing here. And then Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock. This one looks like it had maybe a little water damage as well, but honestly, I want to say I ended up paying like $30 for these 3, which was a really good deal considering it was 15 plus 18 plus 23. Paying $10 each for these is a no-brainer. I'm going to do that every day, especially when it's my buddy Nick and I can support him as well. But we're kind of talking and he gave me some pins and keychains and some stickers to his Nostalgia Con, which is coming up pretty soon here. And we were talking about all that, and he was standing, leaning next to this bad boy, and I said, he's got it for 34 bucks. And I said, what's up with that? And he said, it's just the box. It doesn't have anything else. And I was like, all right. And he was like, I'll give it to you for 10 bucks. And I was like, all right, cool. And he was like, no, 5. And I went, no, we're doing 10 on this. He had it marked for 34. So he definitely hooked it up at 10 bucks. But this thing is awesome. And when I saw it after a while and he said that price, I was like, I can't pass this up. I definitely have to add this to my collection. I've got a few Wii boxes recently, and so this is another cool one to be able to add. And then last but not least, while wandering around, I found this Iggy plushie, which is pretty cool. I'm not sure where it's from. It's in like Japanese, but I never see Iggy plushes. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, I'm buying that. Now, $7 was probably more than I'd like to pay. I think I'd like to pay like 3 or 4 for this, but I don't see it very often, so I ended up grabbing it, which is definitely worth it, and I'm definitely glad I did because this thing looks totally amazing. But overall, I think we did pretty good at this swap meet. Now, I've been here a few years ago, and there was like nothing good, but like I said, I kind of knew Nick was going to be there, so I at least had that to fall back on. But there was a bunch of video game stuff that I was kind of shocked to see, and some of the prices were really good, and some of the prices were not so much. But that's neither here or there. It happens. Some places overcharge, and some people undercharge, and I'm just out here trying to find some deals, and I am thankful because I ended up doing that. But comment down below and let me know what you think about this video, and if you go to the swap meet. I'm gonna get out of here because I've got to clean some games and test them all, and basically have some fun with them. So check out that video out if you haven't already. But overall, I feel like I'm pretty happy with how the swap meet ended up being. It was a snow day and the roads were a little crazy, but we made it and all is good there, so I'm thankful for that. But what do you think? Comment down below. Would you go to the swap meet? But enough about that. I'm getting out of here, so check out that video out if you haven't already.